What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Groomer Podcast. I'm joined with a very special guest today. She actually owns 3 salons. How crazy is that? And she's giving us time to walk through what's going on with her, who she is, etc. But she has been grooming for 26 years. She has been driving professionally and personally every day to be a more ambitious and better groomer. She's got a strong passion for this industry. And she is located up in Cleveland, Ohio. Believeland for anyone out there grooming in Cleveland. Everybody give a warm welcome to Denise. Denise, how do we say your last name? Hero?
Heroux.
Heroux.
Uh-huh.
French
Yes.
like a croissant.
Yeah, that's okay. It's pronounced 50 million different ways. My favorite one is Heroux. The people who like, yeah, that's okay.
Xerox. It's like your
Yeah.
Xerox, but it's Xerox.
All right. I'm like, okay, fine. I can see where that comes from.
All right. That's too funny. Well, cool. Well, Denise, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, where are you right now? I see all the Barkley honors. For those of you guys that can't see this on the podcast, she's got all of her medals in wide array right behind her here. So tell us, like, who are you, Denise?
I actually am just a groomer. To be honest, that does things that other people may be afraid to do. But I started out as just a groomer, and I still am. I have been grooming for 26 years, and I currently own my own business. I've had it for 10 years. I was a vet groomer, and I started out a long time ago at a really prestigious place that had a lot of different breeds at the time, before doodles and all that other fun stuff. So I've had my fair share of purebreds and stuff like that. I thought I wanted to go a competition route. As you can see, I've done a few things. I did mostly rescue. I never dabbled in the purebred, but I realized that wasn't my calling. So yeah, that's a little snippet of my world.
Amazing. Okay, so today it's best to think about you as a business owner.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, very cool. Well, before we kind of talk about that, for the listeners of the pod, they always know I talk about, wearing both hats, the business owner hat and the dog groomer hat. But before we get to the business owner hat, take us back. You said you started in a vet clinic. Is that right?
So I was in a private, but a bulk of my journey has been in a vet clinic. I was there for 13 years.
And why a vet clinic?
It ended up being, I was looking for a part-time job, and it was a vet that was in my area that had an opening for a part-time groomer. And then their full-time groomer quit, and I was there. And they offered it to me. But I loved every minute of that. I wish the environment was way better. I would have never opened up my own business. They would have had me for life. I was there 13 years. I didn't want to leave. But it was, if anyone who's out there is a vet groomer, they're going to understand this, that vets are not people, and they're hard to work for. And it got to be way too much when I started there. Here, this sort of preludes into my business adventure. When I started there, I was the solo groomer. By the time I quit, I had 4 groomers underneath me, and I built their whole department up into what it was. So that I'm really good with leading and managing, and I've always had that knack. So they had it really good. I had it really good. I had part-time hours, full-time pay with a clientele that I didn't want to leave. Entrepreneurship has always was a thing for me, even when I was younger, but honestly, I was happy there. I wouldn't have left, but I loved every minute of it. I learned so much.
And for those of us that don't know, what are the major differences between being a vet groomer versus working in a traditional salon?
So of course you get a lot of the ones that have to be sedated, right? They get kicked out. They, you're that person. But the cool part of what I loved was I could go down to the vet clinic and see the medical side. I learned what lumps and bumps were. I learned how to do, let's say, my cats on sedated cats, and learned how to get efficient with them and be able to do them without sedation. I also learned how to handle dogs. I would never take, our groomer told us to come here for sedation, and I always tried first. So I learned how to handle dogs. It was never just, we're going to sedate. type thing. But really, I think the coolest part was learning a lot of medical stuff.
And do you think groomers today lack that medical knowledge that comes with, understanding the lumps and bumps that they may find instead of just circling them on the card and handing it to the pet parents?
Yeah, so I never realized how much I learned until I had employees. And as I was like, they're like, oh my gosh, there's this gross thing. And I'm like, you guys, it's fine. It's only this. And it really, and I don't know, everything. Yeah. So I love all that gross stuff, but they don't know. Or if the dog is starting to limp, like I can feel a luxating patella and I know what it is, and they just know that the dog may be standing funny. And I really didn't realize I learned that much stuff until having to like being around people who have never been in that part.
And tell me that, I mean, that is fascinating. That is something you probably don't ever think about until you leave that world, right? Because you were just really in the medical, office,
Yeah.
and you were listening, hearing everyone that was there, had some sort of relationship to the vet already. So it was so easy for you to pick up new knowledge in that medical,
Mhm.
on the medical side of things that you're right. You never did think about it till you leave, and then you don't have a vet right next door.
Right. Yes.
Tell me about, like, I'm curious about this. Finding customers as a vet groomer, are you just getting, like, is your pipeline literally filled from the vet itself?
So my vet clinic actually didn't really, they were pretty much, they wanted to offer grooming to have something extra to do and offer. But other than that, they did not promote anything. It was word of mouth. It was just my grooming and the way I handled customers. My customer service is really good too. That's another really strong suit. So yeah, I ended up building it in that way to the point where they never even thought they'd ever have to have even 2 groomers, let alone have a little mini area of 5. So yeah, they had it a
That's
little too easy. They took it for granted.
I was gonna say, it seems like they got the better side of the deal here. You did all the work, you brought in all the customers, and all they had to supply was the space.
Yep.
That's
Mhm.
that's incredible. So, obviously, that whole bout, 13 years, that's a long time. That gave you enough courage and gave you enough confidence that you could really go do this yourself. I mean, you've been kind of wearing the part-time business hat, I'll call it, right? Because you still had, you know, for lack of a better word, a boss. The vet was still in charge, right?
Mhm.
But you were in charge of all the grooming stuff. So, at what point did you say, "Hey, I do have enough courage and confidence that I can go build this up by myself and do it better"?
I didn't, and it was just a very toxic environment that there was no there really wasn't another option. So my husband's the one who said, "We need to get you out of there." And he's the one, so he was in property management, so I've had a little help on growing things or at least doing some of the back end work. And we found a location, he did the build out, and then it was sort of, he had his own full-time job, so then it was just mine, and I ran it by myself for 7 years. And I don't know, I failed miserably all the time. I did all the things wrong. I had to learn from them. I was great with employees when I worked for somebody else, but when I was the one who was in charge of them and all of a sudden I had to make the rules, it was a whole different ball game. So I did all the things wrong. And over time, though, actually what kept me going was I knew I was good with clients, and I knew I would have never told you 10 years ago that I would have had what I have now, like 3 locations and stuff like that. But I always knew I would always have employees. I didn't want to be the face of my business. And I knew that my body would start giving out. So I needed to get an exit plan then at least know that I had to figure out how to grow a business that could sustain our household, as well as I can still collect. I still groom. I'm still at my table 3 days a week. I don't take new clients. And a lot of the clients I've been grooming either were clients that I've had for almost 10 years since I opened, or they followed me and I've been grooming their dogs. I'm on 3rd and 4th generations. I've been grooming their dogs for 23, 24 years. So,
Wow, that is incredible. I mean, that was, you just took us through a lifetime, I feel like, of adventure there. Take me back. I mean, you said right when you started this first build out,
Mhm.
right when you started, obviously, you kind of knew, like you said, the employee management, you kind of knew client management, that client relations, that sort of stuff. Obviously, you knew grooming, and you had this newfound medical knowledge that you didn't appreciate until you left.
Correct.
But at this new build out, you said you made a lot of mistakes. Do you remember any glaring ones that stood out?
Mine is more employee side. Well, let me rephrase that. In the first year, it was easier to be ignorant and I didn't want to learn the things, right? Like it was scary to
Like
learn
what? You didn't want to
government,
learn what?
like taxes and government and that stuff's scary. Numbers, I I didn't collect a paycheck for the first year and a half, right? So like I was in a lot of denial of how to go about handling everything. And within the first 6 months, I had my first employee. So I screwed up on that too. Well, not
Yeah.
having one that soon, but not knowing what I was doing.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I was gonna ask. I mean, the timing, it seems like, again, just the common trend is when most groomers start their own businesses,
Mhm.
they typically just start with just them, whether that's house calls with just them, mobile, just one person, or salons. I guess it's a little bit harder to make them one person, but it's typically very low staff. When did you think that, hey, I need to go hire someone? Like, I cannot manage this by myself.
So I got my first groomer 6 months in when I was booked about 2 to 3 weeks out. And you have to remember 10 years ago, that was huge. It was a whole different ball game pre-COVID versus post-COVID. So that was a big deal to be that far within 6 months. This isn't everyone slammed right now and you could go open up and have clientele. That's not the way it was.
And so tell me a little bit about that. I mean, pre-COVID, you said it was a little bit different.
Mhm.
Um, was it hard to get your first clients? How did you get your first clients?
Mine started, I had a few that followed, and then I just played around with different advertising and marketing. Facebook obviously was a huge social media. But I also knew that once I got the word of mouth out there, it would be fine. That location did really well with, we have a magazine called Mimi's, and you can do editorials. And so people don't realize that they're reading an ad. And it was really nice. That actually kick-started my business. That went really well. That area does great with that publication.
Okay, wait. That is amazing. So this was I'm picturing, correct me if I'm wrong, like a township magazine. Like it's sent out to everyone that lives in this town, and
Mhm.
you could just take out editorials and you would disguise them essentially as ads, and
Yeah.
people would see them and bring their dogs into you.
Yeah. So you can do whatever. They would actually have a reporter come out and a photographer, and they would take pictures and they draw up a story, right? And really it's just an ad and it's all sponsored. It's all paid for.
And how many times did you do that?
I only did that once, actually. I
Okay,
did do
but it
another
worked pretty
in a
well.
few years, but it worked really well. That
Okay.
location did great.
I mean, tell me some more. Obviously, word of mouth is big, and that just kind of happens naturally, no matter if you're savvy with marketing or not. The editorial magazine, I mean, that's a grand idea. I would, obviously encourage anyone out there that has a township magazine or an editorial magazine like that to go try and take out an editorial. What are some other ideas? You said you experimented with Facebook. Is there anything else that you think, oh yeah, we did this one thing that seemed to work and get people coming in?
No, I really think that it was just my reputation of good customer service and adding in that ad. But I had to play around with things too. I still had to be a presence with Facebook and stuff, but at that time it wasn't that big either. Like businesses weren't that big on there at that point. So it was a little trickier as far as that goes. But no, it was pretty much that was about the turning point.
And then tell me, you found your first employee. How did you find this groomer?
I put ads out. I think I posted on like Facebook, and at that time you can, and they still exist. It is petgroomer.com, I think is the website, and that's where I found her from. Because Indeed didn't really, like all those didn't exist back then either. So it was pretty much Facebook throwing it out on that. Um, at that time you could do ads in papers, like online though. So I
Yeah.
just started wherever I could get it inexpensive.
Okay, so
And
these are very humble beginnings here. And now, it's just so funny when you're saying all this in the back of my head just keeps ringing that, wow, she has three locations now. So obviously you figured it out. Let's fast forward a little bit here. When did you jump? When did you know it was time to jump to your second location?
So I knew the owners who were selling the second location. And we found out that they were selling when I was doing my build out on my first location. I had known them through the vet clinic that I was at. They would do like the pet pictures. Anyways, we knew that they were selling because we found them on petgroomer.com. And we were looking for equipment. And we're like, oh, this business is selling. And that's how we figured it out. Anyways, fast forward 2 years. I told them, I'm like, please don't say anything. They're like, no worries, because I didn't want to get in trouble with the vet. And 2 years later, they contacted me. They were trying to sell their business for 2 years. They're like, are you ready for your second location? I'm like, okay. So the numbers had to make sense, though. That was it.
I was there. Okay, so it seems like they approached you. If you don't mind me asking, I mean, how were you guys doing at that first location? How many dogs were you seeing a day? How many groomers did you have? Were you guys doing well at this point?
At that point, I had, oh gosh, that's so long ago, three or four groomers and a bather. I want to say I had support staff as well. So yeah, and at the time it was my sister-in-law who was also working with me. She came over from the vet clinic. And so I had someone I could trust to go in there. They didn't have employees at the second location. So yeah, that was the first time of, buying a location. I'm like, okay, sure. And the price was, we got it down because what else are they going to do at that point, right? They were asking way too much. Most grooming facilities that are trying to sell, because we've looked at a lot and a lot have fallen through, just think that it's worth way more. But now I'm like, okay, sure, why not? Let's try this. I get bored very easily, and I always have to take on new things.
And so did you guys have a hard time filling up that second facility, or was it, kind of off to the races right away?
So in the very beginning, it was me and my sister-in-law. They were only open 4 days. I worked there 2 days. She worked there 2 days. And then we were at the first location the other days. So we split. And that one had to grow a little bit differently. I needed a receptionist before I needed like a bather or anything, because the people would call around, and by the time you called them back, they already had an appointment somewhere else. So within, gosh, how long Patty's been there? We hired her within the first year. So of having that location. And so I had a receptionist.
That's an interesting point, though, hiring the receptionist before the bather, because people would call in, and if you didn't call them back right away, if you didn't answer their calls, they would disappear.
Yep. That I was losing business because they would call around. Now, my first location was the opposite. We didn't have a receptionist forever. No one cared. I built with bathers. So I built with them because I needed to have bathers in order to sustain the business. So, and they're only 20-ish minutes apart. So it's so funny how those different communities are so different, those areas just in itself.
But you adapted.
I did.
Okay. That's a very good point for anyone starting a new salon today. Is dependent on the area, you have to staff your business wildly different. It could be, reception person first, or it could be a bather first. Tell me now you have 2 salons under your belt. You have no employees at the second one, besides kind of your sister who's shared between the first, or your sister-in-law who's shared between the first and the second one.
Yep.
How did we get to round 3?
As far as the third location?
Yeah.
So that is my ingenious plan. It is a cat only location that is in between my 2 locations. Because we were getting so busy with dogs at both locations, and I was the only groomer in the one, and I only had 2 other cat groomers in the other location. And it actually came about as it was cats were the only things that I took as new clients. And I was there on a Sunday because we expanded our hours because of COVID. I was there on a Sunday. And it's going on 2 years. 2 years that we built that one. And I was in tears because it was busy all around me. My poor cats, it was not conducive to them whatsoever. And I'm like, I can't do this. I can't keep doing these cats. Either I'm making the whole room stop, or I'm having to rush through. And not that the cats were stressed, because I'm really good with working with cats, but like, it wasn't what I wanted for them. So I came home and I said, hey, listen, I need a cat salon. And my husband said, no. And I said, yes. And I think he said no 3 times until 65 days later, I had a cat salon. Business wise, it was amazing. So my overhead, I just have a teeny tiny little 400 square foot space, 2 tables, a tub, and cat cage, like a little bank of like 4 cages. And I'm like, but if your overhead is cheap enough, you're a business person, so you're gonna love all this. So my overhead is cheap enough. You don't need the electric. You don't need the bells and the whistles. You don't need the size. You get cheap enough overhead. You charge more for cats anyways, which are almost double what my small dogs are. You don't have to be open full time. I always have a helper with my cats, and you just do them one right after another, so you don't have to worry about. So you do them by appointment. The first year that one was open, it grossed $82,000. And then here, if you want to hear the fun part, and it was only open at most 3 days a week, part-time, like 9 to 4 or 9 to 2, depending on the day. Gets even better. I sell my dirty cat hair for $112 a pound. So it has,
What?
I made over $8,000 my first year in cat hair, which has covered my overhead.
Okay. If you're not as, I don't even know what to say. A, how did you find out you can sell your cat hair? B, who are you selling your cat hair to? Like, what are people using it for?
So I randomly saw it on Facebook even before I had a cat location, but the problem was with my cats, I had to go ahead and you have to prove that you're not cross-contaminating, and I couldn't do that. So I ended up, I could never do it prior, but I knew once I did this, it is actually a lab that does allergy shots. They need it for allergy shots, the dander.
That is amazing. And so you run it up every night, I guess, off the floor, and then you package it up and send it to them?
Every cat, yeah, it just has to be dirty. So we have a 13-gallon garbage can that on the lid says dirty cat hair. And once it gets filled and it's stuffed, it's between 8 and 10 pounds, and we send one out a month.
I mean, that is incredible. What a genius way to pay for your overhead. You literally pay your rent with dirty cat hair.
I pay everything for my rent, my all utilities, all overhead in that facility because it's so small, and is covered. So like my total overhead over there, utilities, rent, and whatever random little things, is about 800, I think. It fluctuates, but between 700 and 800 a month.
Okay, so let's run the numbers here. $700 and $800 a month in overhead in your first year, which wasn't even your best year, was $82,000 gross.
Yep.
On the cat facility or on all three?
On the cat.
So, okay, that is amazing. Not in my wildest dreams did I think a cat grooming facility that's only open 3 days a week could gross $82,000 a year. When did you open that cat facility?
2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in November.
And how are we looking on year 2?
You know, I haven't actually double checked those numbers. I've been so wrapped up in my one, I haven't even looked at my numbers over there. We're better.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're better.
Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing the update there. Tell me, I mean, you own, there's very few people that own cat grooming salons in general, but there's even fewer people that own cat grooming salons and dog grooming salons. Tell me the differences, and it seems like you were hinting at the differences in overhead. Tell me the differences in pricing, and maybe, does your cat grooming salon make more money than either of your dog grooming locations?
It could if we compared the actual numbers. So each location has 6 groomers on staff is usually what we have. 6 groomers. Well, the one location is 6 groomers, 3 bathers, 1 receptionist. That's my magic number. And then the other location, we did lose a groomer that we're looking to fill, but we're never in a hurry for that. I want it to be the right person. And we're also doing a build out to expand that location. We just expanded our first location this year too. But so they're over there, 5 groomers, 2 bathers, 1 receptionist. So if you actually took like how many, like if you took apples to apples, it would definitely. So our cat prices are about 1.5 times more than what our dog prices are.
And give us a range, 1.5 times more. What's the typical dog price and what's the typical cat price for you guys?
My salon rate, because of, and I always hate talking numbers because I don't want anyone to ever think, because our area, like you have to remember minimum wage is like 10.10 and stuff. So this isn't like downtown Cleveland or anything where there's, high flavor. But our shop rate per dog is $60 an hour. And then our cats. So then our cats were ranging, depending if it's short hair or long hair, averages 90 to 100.
Okay, so your cats you're right, just about 1.5 times more per groom.
Yep.
It seems like you have less staff on board for your cats, and your overhead, your lease, and your utility costs are much lower. So it seems like your cats gross more, but that shop is only open 3 days a week. How often are your dog grooming salons open?
5. So that's at 5. And they're also full days and a little bit longer days as well. So
And how many dogs?
typically, well, let's see, 30 to 40 dogs a day, 40 to 45, somewhere around there, depending on what the staff is that day. Each day is a little bit different. I have some that do like part-time, so it's a little bit harder for me if I go off of our busiest days. That's about, so yeah.
And you are somehow managing all 3 of these. As you were doing your magic number there, I kept hearing, all right, 5, 6 groomers, 2, 3 bathers, and a receptionist. I never once heard a manager. Did I miss that?
Have a manager. I just hired a manager, actually. I just hired a manager in June. So no, it's been me. It's been so my husband quit his job March of 2020, right before we got shut down. Shocking. So to be in the business, at least I pay myself as a W-2 employee, so I got unemployment. But so he ended up so he does a lot of the number side and the back end side for me because I'd rather deal with the people. And I know my numbers, but I'm not like, he's a geek about numbers. Anyways, and then he ran the one location for me. So he's like the one who they go to for that. So we sort of split the duties of who has what, which is really nice, but I did end up hiring a manager. So this year I really upped my speaking game, and I traveled a lot. I traveled a lot. So I needed something because I was doing groomers as leads, having groomers that would just sort of watch over everything. And that bit me in the booty one too many times. And I decided I don't ever want to try and make a groomer manager anymore unless there's a specific drive for it. Because I ended up 2+ years with a very toxic environment that I am now currently having to fix. So my fault-ish, a combination of a lot of things, but complacency was a lot easier at the time than having to face things.
That makes sense. And it seems like you're still learning, you're building a business, while you're kind of driving the business as well. So you're still learning the org structure and how to best, organize your team. But I'm sure there is some things that stick out, where you're at now. You have 3 full salons under your control versus where you were in the beginning. Are there any things that you can look at now where you're like, wow, I got this idea or this thing so wrong in the beginning that I fully, I understand now?
Yes. And really it was people management. It was people management when it came to being an owner. That was probably my biggest thing. And not having organization from the get-go. I had to do a whole revamp. And really get my business under control probably about 5 years in. And I didn't have handbooks. I didn't have good handbooks. I didn't have policies. I didn't have structure.
So tell me, if you were to write a handbook right now on this call,
Yes.
what would the let's call it the intro read? How would it read into best setting up your organization to avoid any of the headaches, problems, fights that you've seen through the years with organization and management?
So, as far as like a little opening section too, so that's actually what I speak on. I don't know if you know this. So you know that I met you at Hershey, because I started a podcast and we just sort of kind of got thrown into this thing. But what I speak on is actually getting organized now in your business. So what I learned was what I speak on. But really, when it came down to handbook and stuff like that, it was disciplinary actions and stuff like that were the biggest things that were missing. So yeah, yeah.
I mean, do you think let's dive in on this a little bit more.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, what is the big thing that groomers nowadays are missing when it comes to getting organized?
all of it. It really is. It's all of it. So, we are creative, artistic beings that we don't know the structured side, right? We're very open. We there's a lot of misinformation out there too. Like it drives me crazy when I hear someone go open up your own business, you'll make 100%. And we all know that that's not how this works. So you're younger. I don't grooming. Do you know like sort of the evolution of dog groomers and businesses and stuff like that? Ish.
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 Let's
So
let's,
the
let's
biggest
assume no for your story here.
Okay, sounds good. So I mean, groomers became business owners because they had nowhere to work, right? Like when I started, there was no corporate, there was no nothing. Like, so people just made places to work because it wasn't an actual like skill. You know what I mean? Like there weren't grooming salons, there weren't these things throughout the evolution. Well, unfortunately, groomers were never business owners. And all these bad habits have gotten pushed, generation to generation. And because this is the way I did it, and our industry is just lacking common business knowledge. It is when someone takes my class that is about employee troubleshooting and handling your employees. And the first thing I ask is who has a handbook, and I get 2 hands raised. It's crazy. And I'm like, but the ironic part about this is it is the same percentage in the class that raises their hand as it was when I was attending business classes through Barkley with Chris Berry and Brett Wilson. Chris Berry was always about asking who has a mission statement, who has a handbook. That is the same percentage 15 to 20 years later. How crazy is that?
That's insane. That's literally insane. I'm sure we could speculate about why that is, but I'm really curious if we were to leave people with practical advice, so maybe that changes a little bit. If we could have
Yes.
3 people, take something you say and actually go put it in effect so that maybe there's someone in that room next that raises their hand. What is your suggested, give me a few things that you need for good, employee management as you're starting a business. And I know you said one of them that right there was an employee handbook. Are there, a few more that you could suggest for me if I'm starting my grooming business that I would need a mission statement, employee handbook, etc.?
Oh, I have a whole list for you. I have lots to say on that aspect. Honestly, a mission statement, you need to know why your organization exists, and your public needs to know why your organization exists. When it comes to employees, how is an employee going to know what your business stands for if you can't even define what your business stands for? So handbook, mission statement, and policies. And this is for employee management. This is even so I like to speak in external and internal branding, like obviously external branding, what public sees, and internal branding, what is behind closed doors. So that's not even talking about like the external side of everything. Internal side, policies. Everyone has opinions on how they want their business run, but no one puts it into writing for people to follow. I'm also a geek when it comes to generational things. I love generations. I love learning generational information and all that other fun stuff. And you need to have that in order for it to go forward. That's how, that's what employees want. They want structure and stability.
Okay, so employee handbook.
Mm-hmm.
Employee handbook, mission statement, and policies. Those are
Yep.
the 3 things you need for proper internal employee management when starting a business.
To start with, yes. And then you get into your procedures, and then you get into your operations. But those are like,
Well, I'm curious. Let's maybe take a hip hop scotch over to operations.
Yes.
I get asked this question a lot, and I'm sure you have some good answers. When you're to that point, you've bought your salon, you've, created your employee handbook, you've created your mission statement, your policies. Before we get into the procedures, let's say you're ready to go. You're running your business, everything's going well, but you're sitting there wondering, you're doing everything on you're a new business owner. Do you have a recommended, what I like to call a stack of tools that a business owner in the grooming industry needs? I'm talking to something to do your taxes, something to do your books, something to do your scheduling. Do you have a recommended, like, Alex, you're getting into grooming, you need a Facebook account, you need a website, you need this. Like, do you have a list for that sort of stuff?
I do not, but that's a good one. I've never actually thought about that. I usually speak like to me, that's more startup, the startup aspect that is sort of, I think people take for granted, or yeah, they just, yeah, they tend to may have already had that or thought about it. But no, I have a whole list in my brain. But that's a good one. I'll have to come up with a list now. I like it.
What's spitball? What are some things that come to mind? What actually, to make this even more real?
Yeah.
I mean, for your salons, what are some things that you don't think you could live operationally without?
Grooming software, number one. A good accountant, having a tax attorney or some attorney. We actually had to look up an employment attorney and hire an employment attorney for my staff that I didn't know what we could do with medical wise, all that other fun stuff. Um, and I'm going to throw this out there, a support system. Find people who you can go to, because it's not just the tools that you need the mental support as well. And you need to find those people who can help you make those decisions, or at least unload on at the end of the day, whoever that is. So those would be like, those are my main things. Like, find us that. And I'm huge on the support system, because I didn't have that and I struggled a lot. You don't need to struggle.
How did you find your support system?
Well, I started speaking. It wasn't until 2 years ago, really, that I started finding an actual support system. It's always hard in the grooming industry, right? You can go to networking events, you can go to those things, but no one knows our industry. And I did chamber of commerce, I did networking groups, I did all these, and you always feel like an outsider because you're just the weird dog person, right? They think, which is cool, whatever, we are, I get it. I'd rather be with dogs than people, but you're looked at like they don't understand at all. They don't understand that there's a dynamic, the business side of all of it. Like, this isn't, our businesses grossed just shy of 1.1 last year. And yeah, so like, this isn't, we're not talking about chump change here, but people don't realize that. So my peers are a little bit smaller too, because not a lot of people have as much as I do. So like currently, but just starting to network with other business owners and speaking really helped me, and grooming business owners, pet industry business owners. So speaking really got me my confidence, which is why I'm so big in my class. I'm very interactive. I want to hear, like, everyone wants to hear what your problems are, because your problem is probably the next person's problem as well.
What are the main problems that are brought up in your class, or just to you in general when it comes to running a grooming business?
Employee management.
It seems
Really,
like it all goes back to employees.
it's an employee management. Now, I do speak a lot more on that subject, but I do hiring and firing and toxic work environments and stuff like that. But really, at the caliber of people taking those classes, they already have employees that they haven't done the homework on. And that's sort of why it typically goes to that point.
So twofold here. It seems like a lot of people need help fixing their current employee situation, but I'm sure you encourage a lot of people to refine their process of hiring as well. And it seems, before I jump into the question, when you you said you lost a groomer, quote unquote. You had a groomer leave at one of your salons, and you
Yeah.
were not in a rush to replace that groomer because it's an important decision. I think that is such a key note. I am curious though, in a market like today, where it is really hard to find grooming talent,
Mhm.
how do you go about this hiring process to make sure you find the right person?
I stand behind, I built a really strong brand and work culture. I don't pay 50%. We're W-2, and we're all legitimate across the board. And I still have employees. So it's possible. So I always hate that I can't charge, or I have to pay 50%. It is within the wording of your ads what you can offer. Couldn't offer a lot, but I could sure in the heck could find little perks like, you know what? I think I could afford for 3 people to buy lunch once a month. That's a perk, right? I couldn't do much, but I could pay you once a week. I pay a little bit more for it, but guess what? That's a perk. No one wants to wait 2 weeks for their paycheck. I had a uniform allowance because I wanted them to look I want a certain appearance. So, those, you have to get creative when you're doing a startup, right? You don't have to have all the bells and the whistles. Like right now we have a 401k with a 4% match, and we can do paid time off, and we can do all these things. I pull in, like I just had Jess Adorno in for full day training, one-on-one. I had Dana Chavezray. I've had Macy Pisa come out. So like I pull these people in. So continuing education is huge, but in the very beginning, it doesn't have to be a lot, but any little thing that can show that you care about the employee themselves. And on the flip side, my ideal employee, I want them to keep learning. So of course I'm going to offer perks that encourage continuing education. And I just had a person come in for a demo on Saturday and it didn't work out. She's like, it's not the right place. Okay, cool. Awesome. I don't feel like I have to fight people for it, but I know what I have. I know that I offer more than what everyone else does in the area. They just may not get 50%, but guess what? My groomers are just grooming, like giving haircuts. They're not bathing. They're not answering phones. They're not. And actually half the time the bathers are bored and they clean up for them around their tables while they're still grooming. So we have a really good team environment. So yeah, just my work culture. I know what we have to offer. Is it for everybody? Heck no. And that's fine. We don't have to be for everybody.
I love that. You're very disciplined in what you're trying to build there.
Mhm.
It's, hey, you guys either like this or you don't, and that is totally okay either way. We want to play together, and the best way to play is if we both like something. If you don't like it and I want you to come work for me, this is never going to work anyways, right?
Yep.
I love that. I know we've been kind of wrapping here for a minute, so I kind of want to wrap things up. But
Yeah.
tell us, Denise, you speak a lot, you have classes. Do you have any classes coming up that people can attend? If so, I'd love for you to shout them out. Um, will you be at any of the coming up shows? Give us some intel here.
So the last show I'm speaking at is this weekend, which would be Pet Pro Classic in Dallas. I'm not speaking at Fitz, Fun in the Sun, but I will be down there just as a in and out to support one of my competitor friends. Next year, I plan on still doing my whole entire circuit. We do also, so I don't know if you know this either, but I also am director. I told you I'm the ambitious groomer, right? I'm also co-director of Barclays Pet Pro Cruise. So we just got back from Bermuda. So in January though, Karina and I and Blake will be on the boat, and it's really cool because we have like downtime and we'll set up like really informal meetups, and it was really awesome. So like that's an opportunity to go ahead and sort of hang out with other people. So yeah, so far that's, show schedule's not out yet till next year, but hopefully
All right.
fingers crossed, Pasadena.
So it seems like people can see at shows. People, if they figure out a way to get on that cruise, they can hang out with you there.
I know, right?
What about, can they get a hold of you on social channels, on Facebook? Shout that stuff out.
Yep. So you are more than welcome. I don't hide anything on Facebook. You can either friend request me, Denise Heroux, super easy, Heroux. I'm easy to find, but I do have a private Facebook group as well called The Ambitious Groomer. I only keep it private because I don't want bad business advice going around. So I sort of keep tabs on that. I am on Instagram. I'm not as good on Instagram, but that's also at The Ambitious Groomer. And I will be, as far as a little shout out and blurb of what I'm going to be doing, I will be working on a website that one of the biggest questions I get asked is having my seminars in webinar form. So I am going to be building that in my off speaking season and getting my seminars up online for people to access at any time.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. So it sounds like you're available. Well, Denise, thank you so much for coming on. You have been an absolute pleasure. We've learned so much from you, and you have shown us really what, kind of where that ceiling is for what it means to be a successful salon owner. So thank you so much again. All right, guys. And that's the pod.